In this video, let's go through all the HivePress settings in the HivePress settings section to make sure that the website is set up and functions according to the requirements. Let's start with the listings tab. Here, you can choose a page that displays all the listings. At the moment, let's leave it empty, but later in this course I'll show you how to add pages and we'll come back to this option. If this option is checked, then the listings page will display categories instead of listings until some specific category is selected. With these three options, you can set up the number of regular, featured and related listings displayed per page. Also, note that if something is not clear, you can hover over the question icon for an extra description. Additionally, you can check our docs or ask a question on the HivePress community forum. For example, thanks to this clue, we know that this option allows us to generate listing titles based on custom fields automatically. In the search section, you can select which default fields you want to show in the listing search form. As you can see, at the moment we can choose only keywords, categories and dates, but if you add new searchable attributes, they will also appear in this drop-down list. In the submission section, you can adjust the listing submission settings. For example, you can link custom terms of use page to require users to accept them before adding a new listing. If you are building an appointment booking website for your own company or another type of website that doesn't require users to add their own listings, uncheck this option to hide the front-end listing form. Please note that the listing moderation is enabled by default, so the site admins will have to approve every listing manually before it appears on the front end. Uncheck this option if you want to publish listings automatically without approving them first. This one allows users to report listings for any reasons that violates your website terms. If you want listings to be published for a limited time, in this section you can set the expiration period by setting the number of days after which a listing expires. Also, here you can set the number of days after which an expired listing is deleted permanently. Let's move to the next step. Within this section, you can set up the reviews functionality. Please note that in HivePress, users who add listings are called vendors, meaning that anyone who adds at least one listing becomes a vendor. Using this option, you can allow users to leave multiple reviews per listing. And with this one, you can disable moderation if you want to allow publishing reviews without checking them first. By checking this option, you can allow vendors to reply to reviews left by users. The next one is Vendors tab. In the display section, you can define whether you want to display vendors on the front end at all. If so, then similarly to listings, you can select a page that displays all vendors and set the number of vendors per page. Display name. This defines how the vendor's name will be displayed. By default is always a username. However, if you create some vendor attributes, you'll also be able to set them here to synchronize the vendor name with, for example, a company name, etc. In the search section, you can select which default fields you want to show in the vendor search form. Finally, in the registration section, you can allow direct registration. As I mentioned before, by default, to become a vendor, a user has to add at least one listing. But if you enable this option, then users will be able to register as vendors without submitting listings at all. That's all for vendors. Now, let's move to the Users tab. In the Display Name field, you can set how user names are displayed on the front end. You can leave it as it is, simply the first name, or if your users agree to share their full names, you can select the full name option instead. A more private option is displaying the first name and the first letter of the last name. In the registration section, you can enable or disable user registration. This depends on your website niche, but in most cases it's better to allow website visitors to register because a user account is required for sending messages, adding listings to favorites, and of course booking appointments. If you select the registration terms page here, users will have to tick a checkbox with a link to this page in the registration form before registering an account. You can enable this option if you want to generate a username from the email address automatically instead of showing a separate username field in the registration form. I recommend enabling email verification to ensure every email on your website is authentic. Also, it's really important to restrict access to the WordPress backend for regular users to prevent any potential security issues. Let's move on. Messages. In the sending section, you can enable attachments to allow users to send attachments via messages. And here, you can select the file types that can be attached. If you enable monitoring, then you and your website administrators will be able to monitor all the conversations on your appointment booking platform. Here, you can set a list of blocked keywords. This means that all the messages containing these keywords will be blocked. In the storage section, you can enable or disable storing messages in the database. When disabled, this option basically sends all the messages via email instead of storing and displaying them on the site. If this option is enabled, you can set the number of days to store messages on the site before they are deleted automatically. Alright, now let's move to the Bookings tab. First of all, you can select booking categories, meaning that you can define the listing categories where bookings should be available. In most cases, you should leave it empty to allow bookings in all categories. Here, you can define which booking statuses will block dates in the calendar. For example, by default, if a user books certain days or time slots, those dates and time periods won't be available for other users to book, even if it's not paid yet. But if you remove unpaid from this field, then different users will be able to book the same listing for the same time, but the confirmation gets the user who pays first. If you check this option, the booking availability will be managed per vendor instead of per listing. It's useful for most appointment booking platforms. For example, if a vendor offers different services in various categories, this feature ensures that there won't be any time overlaps, so if one of those services is booked, then users won't be able to book another one for the same time. By checking this option, you can allow vendors to synchronize their availability calendars with third-party platforms using an iCall URL. This option may be really useful for some niches. For example, if you are building an appointment booking marketplace for tutors, you can enable this feature and it will allow vendors to have group sessions. This feature allows users to book the same time period for several times, so several users will be able to book the same session. These two settings are not required for most appointment booking websites, so we'll skip them. Here, it's important to enable this option to enable time slots on your website, so users can book certain time periods instead of daily bookings. You can also enable multiple time slots. For example, let's imagine again a marketplace for tutors. If this option is enabled, users will be able to book several sessions in a row instead of a single session. In the time categories field, you can choose where time-based bookings should be enabled. Leave it empty to have time slots in all categories. Enable time zones if you want to allow time zone indication. It's a useful feature if vendors are in different time zones. For example, if users book online appointments with vendors from different time zones, they will have an indication of a time zone, so they know where their online appointment starts. Finally, there are confirmation and expiration sections. Here you can select a page with terms that users have to accept before making a booking. Here you can set the number of days after which a pending or unpaid booking is cancelled. It allows you to prevent pointless bookings when someone books a listing and then disappears. If that happens, the booking will be cancelled automatically. And here, set the number of days after which a past or cancelled booking is deleted permanently. Click on the Save Changes button and let's move to the Integrations tab. This tab contains all the third-party integration settings like reCAPTCHA. Also, if you purchased any of the premium HivePress themes or extensions, here you can set your license key in the HivePress store section to enable automatic updates. Let's enable reCAPTCHA to protect the front-end forms from spam bots. To do this, it's necessary to sign up for an API key pair for this site. Let's go to the Google reCAPTCHA service page. I'll leave the link to this page in the video description. Now, I'll briefly fill in all the fields. After you fill in the site details, simply copy both keys, go to your website and paste them into the corresponding fields. Then, select the forms you want to protect with a captcha. In this case, I'll choose the user registration form to prevent the spam bots from registering. That's it! We have just finished setting up HivePress. Now, let's move to the next video where I'll show you how to add new listings.